Chapter 621. Let's eat. There's no need to wait for mommy. We can leave some food for her, Zachary declared. He urged his siblings to eat up. The kids ate their breakfast and waited for Orissa patiently. Fortunately, they weren't in a rush. Otherwise, they would have been late. Shortly after, Benjamin grew impatient. He placed the papers aside and got up. The kids promptly giggled when they realized what he was about to do. Benjamin strode into the room. Orissa was still inside the bathroom, so he went there instantly. Knock, knock. Inside, Orissa jolted in fright, for the sound was too loud and shocked her senseless. What are you doing inside? Benjamin's sound boomed out. Orissa's lips twitched. What do you want? She couldn't bring herself to say that she was on the toilet. I was afraid you fell into the toilet. Benjamin heaved a sigh of relief after confirming she was all right. Orissa gaped in disbelief. Leave me alone. I'll come out soon, she told him. After his figure left the room, Orissa flushed the toilet. She washed her face before walking out of the room. At the sight of Benjamin on the couch, she halted in her tracks. It was an awkward moment. Won't you have breakfast? She asked as she went over to him. Benjamin observed her carefully. As she seemed to be in good spirits, he got up and left the room. What a weirdo, Orissa grumbled to herself before following him out. Upon spotting her, the kids greeted her excitedly. Mommy, hurry up, we're about to finish everything. Orissa chuckled and joined them. It's fine. If you finish everything, I can order more food. They were at a hotel, so it would be convenient for her to order anything she wanted anytime. When Benjamin took a seat beside Orissa, she shot him a look. Eat up. We need to go to the hospital later, Benjamin told her. Orissa took one look at the spread on the table and began eating. She took one bite of the food and drank a mouthful of milk. She then stuffed another bite into her mouth. Her cheeks were all puffed up. She looked like a hamster as she munched on her food swiftly. An unfathomable glint flashed past Benjamin's eyes. She looks like a kid when she eats. Glancing at the kids, he noticed how Gavin resembled her when he was gulping down the food. Tim was still shy and munched on his food slowly. He couldn't bring himself to finish all the delicious food. Sweetheart, eat up. If it's not enough, we can order more, Orissa urged. She helped the kids with the food without missing out on any of them. Got it. The kids nodded obediently and chewed on their food. The family sat around the dining table and ate together. It was a pleasant sight. After breakfast, Orissa asked, if Madam Mary can leave with us, will we depart back to Delmore from the hospital? Or will we come back here later? Anywhere is fine, came Benjamin's answer. Orissa's lips twitched. If we depart from the hospital, I'll have to pack up now instead of doing that later. Ethan can pack up for you, Benjamin said calmly. Orissa glared at him. She was fine with Ethan packing up the kids' stuff and his stuff, but she would still have to pack up her personal stuff. I'll pack up my stuff now. She went back to the room and called, Sweethearts, time to pack your stuff. The kids ran back into the room to pack up. Benjamin cast them a look before taking a seat in the living room to reply to his emails. Soon, someone knocked at the door. Benjamin placed his laptop aside and went to answer the door. Mr. Graham. It was Ethan. Benjamin shot him a curt nod. Help them pack up. Got it. Ethan immediately went to help the kids to pack up. Seeing him, Gavin asked, Mr. Frank, did you get a SIM card for Tim? Yes. He can start using it back in Delmore. Ethan replied. He had registered a Delmore number for Tim. Jesse beamed. When Tim gets his new SIM card, we can call each other every day. Tim nodded jovially. Chapter 622. Mr. Frank, why didn't you register his number here? Zachary asked. It's more convenient for him to get a Delmore number. Besides, it's cheaper that way, Ethan explained. Giggling, Oliver teased, Mr. Frank, you get paid a lot. Why do you even bother about discounts? Ethan was embarrassed. Oliver, don't look down on the discount. Tim's going to use this number for a long time, so he can save a lot of money this way. How cheap can it be? Can I get one, too? Oliver asked earnestly when he learned that he could save money this way. Ethan glanced at him. It's a family plan under your daddy's number, so it's free. Oliver immediately said, Mr. Frank, get us new SIM cards, too. We're using international phone numbers, so it's pretty expensive to make calls. His response rendered Ethan speechless. Sure, he agreed hastily. Mr. Graham will be delighted to find out about this. When you get new numbers, you can call each other for free. You can talk as long as you want. I'll get one for Miss York, too. He offered. The kids whooped happily. After Orissa finished packing up, she went to the kids' room and saw Ethan helping them. Mr. Frank, let them do it themselves. Mr. Graham told me to help them out, Ethan told her cheerfully. Miss York, you'll have to help Mr. Graham with his luggage. As Orissa's lips twitched in annoyance, Jessie hopped over to hug her legs. Mommy, Mr. Frank said he'll register our numbers under a family plan. You'll get one, too. That way, we won't have to pay a cent to call each other. Amused, Orissa pinched her fluffy cheek. It isn't free. We're not the ones paying for the plan. She lifted her head and told Ethan, I don't need that. Miss York, the company has to do that for you. You can also join Mr. Graham's family plan with your existing number, Ethan suggested. He wanted nothing more than to be of help. Join Benjamin's family plan. Orissa's brows snapped together. If he marries someone else, it will be difficult to reverse the action. No need for that. If I no longer work at the company, it will be troublesome to cancel it. What is troublesome to cancel? A low voice rang behind her. Orissa turned at her shoulder to see a brooding Benjamin. I was asking if Miss York would like to join your family plan, but she finds it troublesome, Ethan explained carefully. Benjamin scoffed. At once, the air became thick with tension. Orissa peeked at him but met his icy gaze. Her heart skipped a beat. Is he upset over such a minor matter? If you don't think it's troublesome, go ahead, she declared. With that said, she scurried out of the room. She had no idea Benjamin would come after her. He pinned her to the door she had just slammed shut and towered above her. Orissa, what was that? He demanded. Orissa cowered back and pressed herself against the door. He looked scary when he's upset. She mumbled in a low voice, I didn't mean anything. I was just afraid to trouble you in the future. That was why I didn't want to join the family plan. That's all. If you don't mind, you can give me a brand new phone. I'll accept it readily. Benjamin's gaze darkened. Do you want a new phone instead? Orissa parted her lips. I didn't mean that. However, she knew Benjamin wouldn't spare her if she said otherwise. Thus, she swallowed her words. Giggling, she responded, Can I get a new phone? She observed his grim expression carefully and stiffened when she realized he was no longer mad. Chapter 623. I'll get you a new one in Delmore. Benjamin stared at her as his expression relaxed. Orissa glanced at him. Deep down, she was shocked. Did he get mad as he thought I had rejected his kind intentions? Orissa felt her heart skip a beat. She replied happily, All right, then. Don't forget about your promise. I have a great memory, Benjamin snapped. She nodded profusely to appease him. Can't he talk nicely? Look how fierce he sounds. No one will know that he is a good person. I know you have a great memory. I was just reminding you, she said softly. Benjamin's annoyance disappeared instantly. As he was still pinning her to the door in an intimate manner, she reached out and poked his arm. Carefully, she reminded him, Graham, can I go pack up now? You haven't packed up your belongings yet. Ethan had handed this job to her. It was obvious that Benjamin wouldn't pack up his belongings, so she would be doing the job alone. At the sight of her obedient self, Benjamin reached out and pinched her cheek suddenly. He belatedly realized that it was an intimate gesture and turned to leave. Hurry up. Orissa's lips curled as she caressed the spot he had touched earlier. The warmth of his hand seemed to linger on her cheek, making her heart pound. Her cheeks flushed red. Did Benjamin realize that was really intimate? She slapped her own cheek as her heart began to flutter. She was telling herself to calm down when Benjamin walked into the room. Her back stiffened as she turned around in embarrassment. Benjamin glanced at her reddened ears, and his lips curved momentarily. He then strode toward the bathroom. What are you doing? Hurry up. Orissa stuck her tongue out at his back before resuming her packing. Benjamin had little stuff. He only brought a few clothes and suits along. She folded his clothes and placed them in his luggage. After that, she walked around the room to make sure she didn't leave anything behind before coming to a stop. The only thing left was his razor, which was in his bathroom. In the bathroom, the sound of running water could be heard. Confused, she wondered if he was taking a shower. She was deep in thought when Benjamin stepped out. He was wearing a bathrobe that hung loosely on his body. As he dried his hair, his muscular chest peeked out underneath the bathrobe. It was a sexy sight. Orissa gulped as she found him extremely desirable. Her heart began pounding faster, causing her cheeks to heat up. Oh, dear, I've seen many naked men, many of them who were more muscular than Benjamin. I've never lusted after any of them. Slap. Without warning, a towel landed on her hand and obstructed her view. Benjamin's voice rang out authoritatively, "Come and dry my hair." Orissa tugged the towel off her head and glared at him. "Mr. Graham, can't you talk nicely? Why are you so rude?" she demanded. Benjamin whipped his head around and pinned her with a withering look. His presence was so intimidating that Orissa backed down at once. She flashed a grin and hurried over to help him. "It was a joke, so please don't take it to heart. Let me dry your hair now." She began drying his hair with the towel. "Benjamin, why don't I dry your hair with the hairdryer?" she suggested. "Dry it this way," he insisted. Benjamin leaned back on his seat lazily and crossed his legs. He looked every inch a gentleman, an alpha male. His face was flawless and attractive as usual. Orissa took in the scent of his body shampoo and felt her heart race. She was so engrossed in drying his hair that she didn't realize the towel had covered his eyes. Benjamin reached out and pulled her into his embrace. "Ah!" Orissa gasped. "What are you doing?" She glowered at him furiously. Chapter 624. Benjamin looked down. "What were you thinking?" "Nothing," Orissa replied hastily. Her gaze darted around guiltily. She couldn't bring herself to admit that she had spaced out because of him. "If it's nothing, then why didn't you realize the towel was covering my face?" Benjamin teased. An evil smirk flitted across his lips. Feeling embarrassed, Orissa retorted, "I didn't notice it." "Can't that happen?" Benjamin held her jaw and forced her to look up. He stared at her stubborn self and bent down deliberately. His voice was lazy and seductive as he said, "Were you too engrossed in watching me?" Orissa's heart leapt to her throat as she averted her gaze. "No," she responded frantically. Benjamin was pleased by how guilty she looked. "You answered so quickly. That proves that you're feeling flustered," he said as he brushed the tip of his nose across her cheek. It brought about a ticklish sensation. Orissa dodged away, but he merely inched closer. She extended her hand to keep a distance from him. In response, Benjamin's lips brushed across her palm. It felt like an electrical current had shot through her body, so Orissa immediately pulled her hand back. Her face grew hot. "Mr. Graham, you saw everything clearly as you kept an eye on me at all times, huh?" She snuck a glance at him. Benjamin's lips curved. "Are you admitting to it?" "What did I admit to?" Orissa looked away and struggled to free herself. At once, Benjamin's breath turned erratic. He pinned her down and warned in a low voice, "Don't move." Hearing the change in his voice, Orissa felt her cheeks burn. "Let me go," she urged. Benjamin's gaze bore into her. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned amorous. It felt like he was going to gobble her up anytime. Staring at her lush lips, Benjamin lowered his head slowly. "Mommy!" Jasper ran into the room and gaped in shock when he saw his parents in an intimate position. "Oh, Daddy is going to kiss Mommy!" he yelled. Hearing that, the other 5 children scurried into the room. Even Ethan got curious and stuck his head in. He took one look and promptly looked away. In a soft voice, he ushered the kids out of the room. Orissa blushed all the way to her neck. She buried her face in Benjamin's embrace shyly. Benjamin's face was as dark as thunder as he turned to glare at the kids huddled at the door. The kids were staring at them curiously. Oliver was asking, "Jasper, did you see them kiss?" Sensing Benjamin's warning look, Jasper shook his head. "No, I think they were just hugging each other." Zachary warned, "Don't take advantage of my mommy." Let her go. Ethan wanted nothing more than to disappear. They are brave kids, huh? They've probably never seen Mr. Graham flying into a fit of rage. Do I look like I'm taking advantage of your mommy? Benjamin asked. The children exchanged glances. You're hugging mommy. Obviously, you want to take advantage of her. We know what you have in mind. Gavin harumphed. Orissa was too shy to face the kids. She wiggled aside, but the man grabbed her waist and refused to let her leave. I wasn't taking advantage of her. She's the one who loves sitting in my lap. He insisted. Orissa's eyes widened in disbelief. How could he be this shameless? She lifted her head to glare at him. Benjamin arched a brow at the sight of her puffy cheeks. Strangely, he found her angry look adorable. Shameless. Orissa cursed under her breath. How dare he twist the truth? He locked me in his arms and refused to let me leave. Benjamin snorted and turned to the kids, who were all huddled at the door. Have you finished packing up? He asked. The children were gazing at him intently. Other than Tim, the rest seemed to be seething in fury. Don't change the topic. Did you bully mommy just now? Zachary demanded with his hands on his hips. Ethan, Benjamin suddenly called out. Ethan touched his forehead before schooling his expression into a calm one. He went to the door and greeted Mr. Graham. He dared not look up for fear of seeing something explicit. Chapter 625. Benjamin immediately ordered, bring them away. Yes, sir. Ethan hurriedly brought the 6 kids outside. Put us down, Mr. Frank. We haven't gotten revenge against the bad guy yet. How dare he bully mommy like that? I'll never call him my daddy. Ethan was starting to get a headache from all their clamoring. Please stop making a fuss, kids. Mr. Graham and Miss York have mutual feelings. If Orissa didn't like Benjamin, there was no way she wouldn't defend herself. The two of them were very clearly reciprocating the other's feelings, but neither of them wanted the other to know. Mr. Frank, you should get new glasses. There's no way that mommy could be into Mr. Graham. She's getting threatened by him. I saw it with my own eyes. He was holding onto her waist and wasn't letting her go. Zachary wasn't as innocent of a child as he looked. Ethan forcefully dragged the kids out with 3 of them under each arm. Back inside, Orissa had covered her face in embarrassment, but her bright red ears betrayed exactly how she was feeling. Benjamin looked away from the door and at Orissa. He chuckled lightly at the sight of her red cheeks. So you know what being embarrassed feels like, do you? Orissa's mouth twitched and she glared at him in annoyance. You're absolutely shameless. I was just embarrassed by your antics, okay. How could he tell the kids everything just like that? Even if he isn't embarrassed, I am. Let go. He simply smirked in response as his eyes gleamed. She gritted her teeth in annoyance at the sight of his self-assuredness. Are you angry? Orissa simply scoffed and looked away. Benjamin pinched her cheek lightly. They're always so defensive against me. I just wanted to mess with them a little bit. Orissa glanced at him. I bet none of the people who worship the oh-so-great Mr. Graham know how shameless you actually are. I should film this and post it, so the public would know what you're actually like. And what would that be? Benjamin raised a dangerous eyebrow, instinctively knowing she wasn't about to say anything good. She glanced at him and swallowed before saying cheerfully, a loving father figure, of course. Benjamin knew that wasn't what she was about to say originally, but he accepted it anyway. So I'm not usually loving. Orissa didn't answer his question and poked his arm. Can you let go of me now? She was beginning to feel incredibly flushed after being stuck in his embrace for so long. Benjamin's eyes gleamed teasingly. I'll let you go if you give me a little kiss. She looked at him in shock at how daring he was. She chuckled and he frowned deeply. What's with that look on your face? He said unhappily. If I kiss you right now, you're really not going to want to let me go. Orissa winked flirtatiously at the man holding her. He scoffed. Try and find out. She instantly started blushing again. After all, she was the one who had brought it up. If she didn't do it, it would be too cowardly of her. Oh, well, she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. It's not the first time we kissed anyway. Why wouldn't I dare kiss him again? Besides, the kids aren't here. She leaned in closer to him. Compared to Benjamin's kisses, hers wasn't even qualified. However, her lack of technique simply proved to fuel the fire in Benjamin's heart even more. It was precisely the messy way she pressed her lips to his and the unfamiliar way she deepened the kiss that turned him on. His gaze darkened and he gripped the back of her head gently as he took the initiative. By the time Benjamin let her go, Marissa's legs were already as weak as jelly and she collapsed into his embrace. Her face was red and her gaze was unfocused and misty, while Benjamin's fiery stare was locked onto her firmly. If he wasn't busy, he would really like to teach her exactly what a kiss was. Remember, this is what a real kiss is. He leaned down and whispered in a raspy voice into her ear. Marissa's face turned even redder and she quickly sat aside. You said a little kiss, not whatever that was. Benjamin chuckled again at the sight of her huffy expression. Chapter 626. Marissa's face heated up at the sound of his low chuckle. She glanced at him. Are you going to the hospital or not? He smiled and replied, of course. Then go get changed. She looked away, her heart beating wildly in her chest. Still smiling, he reached out to caress her hair lightly. Go and bring my clothes to me. Marissa's mouth twitched. You can go get it yourself. I just packed your bag when you took a shower again. Benjamin frowned. Is taking a shower a crime now? Marissa pressed her lips together. Remember what you promised me. You're not self-aware at all. Benjamin scoffed. She glared at him again, but at the sight of his sharp stare, she quietly got up and went to bring him his clothes. Hurry and change. She tossed his clothes to him and turned to walk into the bathroom to help him pack some of the toiletries. Benjamin walked into the bathroom curiously at the sound of bottles clinking. When he saw Marissa putting the toiletries into a bag, he felt a vein pulsing in his forehead. What are you doing? I'm bringing these back home. She said naturally. Clearly, this wasn't the first time she'd done it. He stared at her speechlessly for a whole minute before choking out, Marissa, how poor do you think we are? Why do we need to bring all of these back? She giggled at the sight of his disgust. This has nothing to do with money. It's just a waste to leave it here, that's all. It wasn't as if these belonged to the hotel. They had bought them specifically when they came over, so obviously they had to bring their own belongings away. Benjamin just continued to look at her in silence. She proceeded to tidy up their things as he stared. Just leave these here. Someone else will come and tidy things up, Benjamin said. He only left the room after she continued to ignore him. Marissa checked the room, making sure she hadn't left anything behind, before leaving. She glanced at Benjamin, who was in the middle of changing. Then she walked out to check the kids' room as well. After Benjamin was done changing, he walked out with his hands in his pockets and watched her pacing around the room. She turned around and looked at him. Are you done? Clearly, Benjamin said in a deep voice. Then let's go to the hospital. She went back to take her handbag before the two of them went downstairs. Ethan was already waiting for them with the 6 kids all set in the car. Mommy, Mommy, come here, Mommy. All of the kids began waving at and calling out to her. Marissa quickened her pace at the sound of her kids. Mommy, come on. Okay. She bent down to get into the car and the moment she sat down, Gavin slammed the door shut and left Benjamin outside. Drive. The kids called out to the driver in unison. The driver looked outside, unsure whether to listen to the little boss or the big boss. If you don't drive, I'll get you fired. Gavin threatened. All the driver could do was drive away. Benjamin's face became completely dark at the sight of them leaving him behind once again. His entire being radiated with a frigid attitude. Ethan stood there and looked down sheepishly, not daring to look at his boss. Sweethearts, aren't we going to wait for Daddy? Marissa said, looking at the 6 of them. Gavin scoffed. No, he bullied you. Marissa hugged him and kissed his little face. Sweetheart, we can't leave him behind next time, okay? He'll get really mad. I don't care, Gavin said with a snide smirk. Zachary and the others were smirking too. Mommy, don't be scared of him. If he bullies you again, we'll deal with him. Marissa chuckled. If they had seen whatever he had just done to her, they would be even angrier. Back at where Benjamin was still waiting furiously, Ethan had finally arranged for a car to come here and bowed, gesturing for Benjamin to enter. Here, Mr. Graham. Benjamin glared at him, and Ethan immediately bowed lower in an attempt to make his appearance as invisible as possible. He shut the door after Benjamin got on and then went into the passenger's seat. Chapter 627. Before the car stopped in front of the hospital, Orissa spotted Regan waiting at the main doors. Her eyes darkened at the sight of him. "Mommy, it's Regan." Zachary turned to remind her. The other 5 kids turned to look, and when they saw Regan in the doorway, they all frowned in unison. "What's he still doing here?" Zachary glared at Regan angrily. "That's Mommy's enemy. How dare he still come back after getting told off by Daddy?" "Mommy, let's go in through a different entrance," Zachary suggested, not wanting his mom to get caught up with Regan again. Orissa patted him on the head gently. "No need. Mommy will go in from here, but the rest of you will go in from the back." She didn't want Regan to know about her kids. She remembered extremely clearly how Regan had chased her out. He had personally chased her out cold-bloodedly. Zachary frowned in disagreement. "Mommy, you should follow us. If not, that guy is going to ruin your mood." "Yeah, Mommy, he's right. You should go in with us," Oliver began convincing her as well. "Mommy, what about you go in from the back and we teach him a lesson here?" Jasper said. Tim nodded and said, "Miss York, we shouldn't see him. If not, you're going to get bullied again." "Mommy, don't go down here. He's going to get on your nerves again," Jessie said. Orissa comforted the kids quietly. "If I don't see him now, he's going to come back to pester us. He can come back all he wants. We're leaving soon," Zachary said with a huge roll of his eyes. Orissa chuckled. "Just go in from the back, you guys. I'll go and meet him." Without waiting for the kids to say anything, she got off the car and closed the door rapidly behind her. The 6 of them stared after her in worry. Instead of asking the driver to go to the other side of the hospital, they continued to watch her. Benjamin's car arrived almost right after she stepped out, and he narrowed his eyes at the sight of her walking out. "Mr. Graham, Miss York has gotten off the car," Ethan reminded, having seen her walk out as well. Benjamin stared at her, still angry about what had just happened. Even though he continued to stay in the car, he was still watching Orissa's every step closely. Ethan chuckled quietly when he peeked at the rearview mirror and saw Benjamin's hidden worry. Before Benjamin could realize it, Ethan quickly looked away and got off the car. It was good that he chose to get off when he did, because he knew that Benjamin would have gotten even angrier if he happened to see Orissa getting mistreated. Regan instantly walked toward Orissa with a faux sincere smile on his face, looking for all the world like a loving father. "Isa, why are you here again?" Yesterday, Regan hadn't known if Orissa was here to visit someone else or if she needed to see a doctor. He had stopped by today to test his luck, and lo and behold, she was actually here again. Orissa crossed her arms as she glared at his fake smile coldly. He had looked at her the same way many years ago, too. Now, it seemed more ironic than genuine. "Have you ever even treated me as your daughter? Or did you just put on an act because of Mother?" Regan hesitated for just a millisecond before he hurriedly replied, "Of course." Orissa just scoffed coldly. "Why don't you look into a mirror to see how different your smile actually is now?" Regan instantly heard the spite behind her tone and his faux smile nearly disappeared, but he managed to control himself. He wasn't looking to start an argument with her today. He did his best to look peaceful and said calmly, "Orissa, are you feeling sick or something? I was careless yesterday and said some things that I didn't mean. I hope you won't mind them." Orissa smiled. Regan was only acting all nice and friendly now that he knew. She knew Kingsley and the others. How ironic. Chapter 628. Even though she had trained her heart to become as strong and impenetrable as ice, Orissa still felt a sting in her chest at the thought. "Regan, you were never there when I needed you. You just wanted to use me. Now that I no longer need you, stop trying to come at me with that fake smile. I'm not stupid. I only let you guys bully me because I saw you guys as family, but now we're not related at all, so stop trying to guilt-trip me with your so-called fatherly act. Even if you're shameless enough to do it, I find it disgusting." She was ruthless and harsh with her words, leaving no room for Regan's dignity. The patient's relatives walking by all stared at the two of them, their critical gaze piercing through Regan. His expression changed slightly as he found it harder to hold back his anger. Issa, I know you're still angry at me for things I've done in the past. But think about it. Your grandmother didn't like you, so if I treated you too well, she would hate you even more. Orissa wanted to roll her eyes. How dare he even come up with such an excuse? If he really wanted to treat me well, he could have done it secretly. But all he ever felt when he saw me was hatred and disgust. She never knew what she had done wrong when she was younger. In fact, she could never understand why a father would hate his own daughter so much. You're all disgusting. Did you think everyone would be shameless as you? I already made it clear. Enough that I don't want anything to do with any of you. We're no longer related, so please never come and find me ever again. If you do, I'll make sure that you regret that day for the rest of your lives, Orissa said with a stony gaze. Regan's heart sunk to the bottom of his stomach at how much his daughter had changed. I'm your dad. How could you say such things? How dare you threaten your own father? He yelled furiously. She just looked at him with a smirk on her face. Bet you can't hide it anymore, can you? Then don't try. I'd rather you yell at me than die from holding it back and then extorting me even after your death. Regan's face was rapidly turning dark red. I know why you're here. You just want to get on Mr. Watts' good side, aren't you? Orissa said, glaring at him coldly. His eyes gleamed again at the sound of his main priority. Issa, don't mind my temper. You know how bad it can get. I really came here to see you today. We haven't met in so long that I was worried about you. Orissa really couldn't handle how shameless Regan could be. Did my mom like this desperate, pathetic side of him? If not for that, she really couldn't figure out why her mother would ever get together with a guy like that. Stop with the pretense. I might actually vomit if I see any more of that, Orissa said abruptly. Stop thinking of ways to get lucky off me, by the way. If I get mad, believe it or not. She trailed off as she approached him and warned in a low voice, I'll get Mr. Watts to teach you a lesson. If you're really so desperate, maybe you can try selling your daughter and wife off. That would be much quicker and more effective than wasting your time with me. Regan's face was so red it was turning purple and he glared at her, so angrily that he couldn't speak. Orissa scoffed and walked into the hospital. Orissa, Regan yelled loudly after her. How could you? I put aside my dignity to come and find you, and now you're embarrassing me like this. Orissa looked down and smiled bitterly. She had to treat these heartless people the same way for them to truly get a hint. When she looked up at Regan again, her eyes were already as cold as before. Compared to you, I'm a saint. Before you tell me off, look in the mirror and see exactly what kind of person you are. Do you think you have the right to scold me? Regan almost jumped in shock at the sight of her complete and utter chilliness that was incredibly reminiscent of a person he knew. She turned and walked away, heading to the bathroom to wash her face. She was hoping that the splashes of cold water would help to get rid of her gloomy heart. But she still felt her eyes beginning to moisten. She continued to wash her face, not knowing if the water droplets streaming down her cheeks were from the tap or her own eyes. Chapter 629. You're so useless. How could you get bullied by someone like that? A familiar mocking tone echoed in the bathroom as she looked up to meet a man's disdainful stare. Her heart clenched as she felt even worse. Benjamin strode in and he pulled her over daringly. You. Orissa wanted to push him away angrily but was shocked by his next move. He pulled her into his embrace and placed a warm hand behind her head as he said coldly, You can rest on my shoulder for a bit. Orissa was stunned speechless. I wasn't going to cry, she said stubbornly, when in actual fact she had almost been moved to tears by his actions. Benjamin chuckled, as if I could have made such a mistake. He lifted her chin. Her innocent yet stubborn expression made it hard for him to look away. If you didn't cry, then why are both your nose and eyes so red? Orissa paused in surprise. Were they? She did feel like crying just now, but she hadn't actually cried. He swiveled her around to face the mirror. See, your eyes are red. Of course you cried. Orissa saw her eyes tinged with red at the corners. She really did look as if she had just cried. I didn't cry, she refuted stubbornly, unsure of even her own words at this point. Benjamin glared at her. What happened to the strong-headed girl who left me behind? How dare you get bullied by someone like that? If I were you, I'd be embarrassed to keep my face straight. Orissa had just started feeling touched when his words managed to set her off again. She pushed him away. I'm not the one who actually left you behind. Why are you blaming me? Benjamin pressed his lips together in an attempt to hold back his smile at the sight of her annoyance. Who else if not for you? Orissa looked up at him. Your sons were the ones who did it. Benjamin frowned. Gavin. At the sound of his annoyance, she was afraid that the two of them would be on bad terms again and said, all of them. She walked out in the midst of Benjamin's confusion and disbelief. Instinctively, she glanced at the doorway and saw no trace of Regan. What are you looking for? He's already gone upstairs. Benjamin snatched her hand and walked toward the elevator. She didn't feel like arguing about his crudeness and simply glanced at him. Where are the kids? They went up too, he said, turning back to look at her. No way. Orissa didn't believe him at first, but when they arrived at the floor they were supposed to be at, she spotted all of the kids in front of her. Mommy, are you all right? All 6 kids surrounded her worriedly and immediately began to bombard her with questions. Orissa smiled brightly at the sight of the kids' innocent stares and she reached out to hug them. I'm fine. Let's go visit great-grandaunt. The 6 of them looked at her again before following her over to the hospital ward. Sean had brought Mary to do a full-body checkup earlier that morning and found that there was basically nothing else wrong with her. At the sight of all of them coming around, Sean said, she can finally transfer back to Delmore. Orissa smiled at the good news, and the 6 kids were lit up with joy as well. Great-grandaunt, once you're all better and back in Delmore, I'll take you to eat great food and see some really nice places too. Jesse said cheerfully, showing off his cute missing tooth. Mary smiled and caressed her head tenderly. Of course. Mommy, are we going to bring great-grandaunt back home now? Zachary said happily. Yep, Orissa said before turning to look at Benjamin. Are we heading back now? Pack up and we can leave soon, Benjamin said with a nod. Mary looked at them and called for Orissa. Yes, grandaunt. Orissa walked over and helped the elderly lady sit up. Isa, I want to go back and take a look. Can I? Mary wasn't willing to leave just like that. She had things that she hadn't finished keeping back home. Orissa glanced at Benjamin. Can we? Benjamin looked back at her and asked Sean. It's all right for grandaunt to go back, right? Sean chuckled. Of course. Just drive slowly and be safe. Chapter 6:30. Benjamin noted that there was a stretch of dirt road heading to the village, so he turned to talk to Ethan. Arrange for us to fly over from there, and then fly back home. Yes, sir. Benjamin didn't want to waste time driving. It was better for them to fly over to the village first for Mary to get used to it. After she looked around the village enough, they could all fly back home together. Orissa mentally agreed with his idea. It would save a lot of time and stress going back and forth. She explained the situation to Mary, who was endlessly grateful. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for troubling you guys. Don't say that, grandaunt. You can't be in any stressful situations right now, and taking a plane would get rid of that, Orissa comforted her. Mary nodded. Orissa finally started helping Mary tidy up her things along with the help of the 6 kids. The helicopter arrived right after she had finished helping Mary pack. Are you ready? Benjamin asked Orissa. She nodded. All done. Then let's go. Benjamin called for the kids to follow Ethan out first. Orissa was helping Mary onto the wheelchair and Benjamin walked over after seeing that. Hold on to the wheelchair, he said to Orissa. She turned to look at him when he suddenly picked up the old woman to place her in the wheelchair gently, which shocked both Mary and Orissa. Orissa giggled and gave Benjamin a big thumbs up. He simply glanced at her. Give her a blanket or a shawl. Oh, I'm not cold, don't worry. Mary said, almost tearing up at his kindness. Benjamin may have been cold and sharp on the outside, but he was still warm and kind on the inside. Orissa brought over a blanket for Mary. It's better to keep this on, grandaunt. It's cold in the hospital, and it'll be cold on the plane later as well. Mary looked at the two of them with a smile on her face. Okay, I'll keep it on. Orissa pushed the wheelchair out to meet the 6 kids, who were busy helping Mary with her luggage. Even Tim was holding onto a backpack. "Tim, please give me that backpack." Mary didn't feel right letting a small child hold onto her things. "All of you, hold onto those bags for Great-Grandaunt." "Great-Grandaunt, we're fine. It's not good to put too much pressure on your legs," Zachary said with a smile. "Great-Grandaunt, I'll carry it," Tim said, keeping a firm grip on his backpack. Benjamin looked over to see a rather heavy backpack in Tim's embrace and gestured for Ethan to go help him with it. Tim held onto it tightly, not wanting to let go. "I can take it by myself, Mr. Frank." Ethan chuckled at the sight of Tim's stubbornness. What kind of treasures could possibly be in there? Tim just glanced at him silently. Orissa and Benjamin looked at Tim curiously as well. Mary chuckled. "It's his piggy bank. Our ids are in there as well. No wonder he didn't let us take that just now," Oliver said. Tim pouted. "It's a glass jar. It's fragile and you might break it." Orissa chuckled and continued teasing her son. "How much do you have in there now?" Tim looked at her shyly, not daring to say anything. "Daddy will take it for you," Benjamin said, picking it up smoothly. Tim looked at him anxiously, but Benjamin just jerked his chin forward. "Watch where you're walking." Tim looked at him and mumbled, "I can take it myself. It's quite heavy. I can promise you that it won't break with me holding it," Benjamin said haughtily. Tim just pressed his lips together at the sight of Benjamin not letting the bag go. All he could do was run off to take something else. "We'll hold on to these." Jasper wasn't letting him take anything either. Orissa saw Tim feeling a bit panicked and called out, "Tim, come over here and help push the wheelchair." "Okay," Tim said as he scurried over to help Orissa push the wheelchair. Orissa smiled gently and patted him on the head. They got into the plane and flew over to Rutesi village. Orissa was worried that Mary wouldn't be used to it and kept watching over her and Tim. "Grandaunt, are you feeling okay?" "Yup." Mary pressed her lips together. She was feeling nervous since she had never been on a plane before, but she felt too shy to actually say it.